Good morning, Julie, and welcome to Business Breakthrough. So, just for anybody who's listening or who is in the meeting who hasn't heard about Emily's gift, you just want to give us a quick background of what it is and what its mission is. You're on mute.
Hmm. Yeah, Emily's Gift is an appeal within the Pied Piper charity to raise £500,000 in 1 year to fund a psychologist on the Children's Cancer Unit at Gloucestershire Royal Hospital. And the reason for that is we are the only children's cancer unit in the Southwest that doesn't have any psychological support, despite the guidance in 2005 saying that all children having cancer treatment should have psychological support. And it's not just for the child with cancer, it's for the siblings, the parents, the carers, absolutely everyone. And it's Emily Kent was my daughter. She died 28 years ago from a brain tumour, and we had a charity then. And then we closed it after we didn't have any other children when she died, and we had the charity, and then we closed it when we had two other children. And it's a sort of she would have been 30 last year, and so I just decided I wanted to do something else for that unit, and that's what they need really. So that's it.
Fantastic. So, the rumor has it from Louise that this fundraising appeal is somewhat different from the previous one. So what are you up to this time? Because you're always coming up with great ideas. So, what's the story about this one?
Well, it's the biggest I've ever taken on, really. When she first died and we had the charity, we literally just initially set up to raise money for anaesthetic equipment so that more children could be scanned, because small children have to be anaesthetised to go through the scanner. So we couldn't ever get her scanned to see how the treatment was going. So literally more or less set up to buy the anaesthetic equipment, which I can't even remember how much it was, something crazy like 50 or 60,000. And that sort of snowballed into whatever people asked us for, we would raise money. And last year with Pied Piper, it was our 30th year, and I set myself a target to raise 100,000 in 1 year and got 30 businesses to raise 3,500, which actually in the end brought us an extra 140,000. And that was a sort of trial for this because, you know, you're not going to raise 500,000 in 1 year from karaoke nights and raffles. And so I've broken it down to 250 businesses give me £2,000. And that makes it sound really easy. And I have made it easy for the businesses because I've said to them, because we're going to fund the psychologist for 10 years, you can give me £200 a year for 10 years. You can give me £400 a year for 5 years. You know, financial advisors, we haven't got any on here, but financial advisors tend to just write me a cheque for £2,000. But other businesses, you know, businesses I've known, the shop that I buy all my dresses and jeans from, she said, I want to give you £2,000, but I can't give you £2,000. I said, listen, just give it to me. And she had a fashion show, gave me 600. She'll do another one. She'll do another one. So I just broke it down and made it simple because so many people want to be involved, but they can't just write a check for 2,000. So made it easy. On top of that, people are doing things, you know, people are running marathons, people are having a coffee morning, fantastic. But for me, it was a sort of box ticking, 250 boxes, and I tick them as people say, yeah, we'll give you £2,000.
That's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it just shows, I mean, the technique I teach, which is called small hinges make swing big doors. And it is that, you know, when you break things down into small pieces, it's amazing how doable they suddenly become. Whereas you say to somebody £2,000, like, oh, can't do it. And then you say, well, £100 every year for 10 years. And actually then split that down by a month almost. And it's hardly anything, is it really?
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. So what are the key points about this particular appeal? Obviously, it is mostly looking at the bulk of the money coming from these companies, but you say that, you know, you're talking about these other fundraising events going on as well. So what sort of do you always know what those are going to be, or do people just go off and do them and you suddenly give you a check because they did some fundraising?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, really. Some businesses want you to stick it all over social media, which I don't have a problem with at all. If they're going to give me the money, I'm quite happy to go out, take photos, stick it all over LinkedIn. Some businesses, well, some people will donate anonymously on our Just Giving site, and sometimes it's frustrating when it comes on Just Giving. The whole thing's anonymous. You don't even know how much it is until you get Just Giving statement. And we have had random checks come in for £2,000. We have no idea. It's a compliment slip with CW on it or something.
Oh, great.
So, it's a bit frustrating because you want to thank everyone, but you just can't. Some people are very self-contained. They like to run their event, however it is, and I might just fly in, say something and fly out. It's a real mixed bag, really, of what people want and expect. But I think the key points are when I'm trying to, because it's all about the story. At the end of the day, it's about the story. And Nigel's going to be nodding because that's what he does. He makes stories come alive. And a lot of people, and Pete was one of them, that helped us 28 years ago when we first started the Emily Kent Charitable Trust. Those people, my cousins that I haven't seen for a few years, are turning up at events and raising money and getting their husbands to support us because they remember having their children at the same time, and they remember our whole family being devastated. So they're coming out of the woodwork and raising money. And I think it's all about the story. And the story is, why should the families in Gloucestershire not have the same support that you have if you live in Taunton or Exeter or wherever? And that's one key point. And the fact that when we were having cancer treatment, there was probably about 20 families in Gloucestershire. There's 37 families at the moment, 37 children having cancer treatment. 3 of them are babies. Oh, and of course, people have said to us, did you have support? Well, no one talked about mental health 28 years ago. We literally left the hospital with a box of her belongings. We'd been trying some stem cell treatment at the time. No one gave you a leaflet that said, do this. You were literally told, you need to register the death and da. Nothing. Yeah. So it's a whole different ball game now. And these families desperately need the support. And the teenagers, it's hard enough being a teenager without being told you've got leukemia on top of it and you've got to have treatment for 3 years. So I think the key thing around here is people are like, gosh, what if that was my niece or my whatever who got cancer and had no support, really. So it's about the story and getting people to come on board with it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, and are you finding that it's extending its reach outside of Gloucestershire? So you're getting people that, because obviously have connections where, we all know people in different parts of the world and different parts of the country. So you're finding it's actually not so much just Gloucestershire people donating now?
It is mainly, but with an anonymous check came from Leeds. The postcode was Leeds, and that was the CW. So I think probably LinkedIn is a powerful tool, and businesses have contacted me. I mean, a guy from Brew and Dolphin, which is quite hard to get into because they're quite a big company, but a guy from Brew and Dolphin contacted me and said, oh, I've seen you're making a lot of noise on LinkedIn. Could we have a chat? And actually, he was quite interesting. He was quite young. And I said to him, how many people work at Brew and Dolphin? He said, oh, about 50 something. And I said, I think you could give me 4,000, really. And he laughed. He laughed at me. And then we discovered he knew my son and drank with my son in the retreat in Cheltenham. And then I had an email the following day saying, yes, we will raise 4,000. So, it's how, I can be cheeky. I actually hate asking.
I know you are cheeky, yeah, but it's a bit the case you don't ask, you don't get, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like asking for money, but if I'm on a roll and there's a bit of banter and cheekiness going, then I will, go for it.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting, has it come? I know because we were halfway in time at the weekend. We're 6 months in, and we're on with pledges. 280,000 at the moment. So I know I've got to start branching out, really. And we have signed the contract with the NHS, and we've got a sort of break clause at 5 years, because obviously the salary of 50,000 times 10 is not going to be 50,000 in 5 years. Sure. So the NHS know that we are expecting them to start inputting so that at the end of the 10 years, they will take it on. Then, and we'll have case studies and everything to prove that it's so needed.
So you mentioned that this hasn't happened in Gloucestershire. Do you know why there's any reason behind why Gloucestershire didn't do this when the rest of the Southwest has has been providing psychological help?
I do sort of defend the primary trust in Gloucestershire because I think we have built, look at Bishop's Cleeve and how many thousands of houses that were built there. Longlevens in Gloucester, Quedgeley, the other side of Gloucester. So Gloucestershire now is so much bigger. So more families, more children with cancer. And I think it's grown so quickly without the NHS really thinking ahead and budgeting that they actually need to supply this service. So that's my way of defending them, really, as I said, because it was so small before. And this is going to bring it to their attention, and they know that they're going to have to do it, really. But if no one had brought it to their attention, I imagine more money would go to the heart department, the liver department. Every department wants something.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it is caught out of a pint pot a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for the other counties, how long have they had this sort of help in place? Is it fairly recent, or some of them had it?
I don't know, but I do know that we got 2 consultants on the Emily Kent unit, and one of them, when I said to him, this is going to happen, he said, oh my gosh, I've been waiting 20 years, because if the guidance came out in 2005 that every unit should have it, then obviously some units got on it. We had a new female oncology paediatric consultant arrive a year ago. And when she arrived, I met her on the first day. We had all the families out at Hynham Court. She said, I can't believe there isn't any psychological support. She said, well, she'd come from somewhere else. I want to say Exeter, but it'll be a bigger hospital near Exeter. But she said, this is a big unit, 37 children, and that's without the ones that are in remission that also need the support. We had a lady who contacted me. Her daughter goes into remission in October and was invited to a talk in Bristol from the psychologist about how, what would happen in remission. And at the end, she said, oh, I live in Gloucestershire. And she said, oh, you won't get it then. Oh, I mean, having listened to, because our children they usually go straight to Bristol, and the prognosis is decided, and what the protocols are decided, and they start there and then they come back to Gloucestershire and have the rest of it. So I imagine, because a mum stood next to her and said, yeah, I was invited to that, and I knew what they would say. And I think they're on a list, they can see they're coming up for remission, they invite them to it. And I said, anyway, you will have it, because we've paid the first year's salary now as well, and we're just hoping they're doing the recruitment process, and hopefully by the end of the year the person will be in situ.
So for those people that start off in Bristol, do they get support while they're in Bristol, or do they not?
Wow.
Yeah. Get anything at all?
That's another thing. There's one psychologist there, 60 odd beds. And I did ask one of ours, I said, did you see the psychologist when you're in Bristol? She said, we did. For one session when we were first diagnosed. When we've asked to see her, but can never get in. And she is funded every year. So as the year is ending, they never know if she's going to be refunded for the next year or not, which is what made me say, right, we'll raise it for 10 years. Because also I think it'll attract, hopefully, a better quality of psychologists, because who applies for a job that might not be there in a year? This is going to be funded for 10 years, so you've got stability as well. But I also contacted a boy that was on Instagram, and his mum had put a picture of him walking down a corridor. He looked about 12 in a hoodie, and she talked about his cancer and everything. And I contacted her and I said, oh, where are you having your treatment? She said, the Royal Marsden. And I said, oh, have you been offered psychological support? And she said, we have been offered it, but we're still on the list.
So they haven't actually received it, in fact. Yeah.
No. So I think it probably is a problem in a lot of hospitals. And we know that because as Vice Chair of the Pied Piper, we have 40 children admitted a month with mental health illness, try to take their own lives, excessive self-harming, whatever. They're in for a month, and then they leave, and they're told, we've got an appointment for CAMS for you, but it might take 14 months.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's a sort of this kind of care. Well, it's the same for adults, isn't it? Look at the amount of adults that need psychological, mental health support, and we haven't got enough of it.
Yeah, I suppose one of the challenges would be whether there's not only whether the funding and things is there, but whether there's physically enough psychologists and trained people actually deliver the service, even if it was funded, because you know, they don't come out. You don't come out of university suddenly as a clinical
No,
psychologist.
no.
Or
Actually, there's a guy, I don't know if some of you know him, Liam Maskell. He works for a website company, and he is running the London Marathon for us. And we have the hat you can see behind me. We have pins. They're really lovely. And he had it on, and he was giving a talk about websites to a group of psychologists. And one of them said, "Is that the Emily's Gift hat?" And he said, "Yes." And he was bombarded with questions about the job. They were firing questions. Is it 4 days a week? Is it this? He said, "I'm just running the London Marathon. I don't know anything about the job." But some psychologists have contacted Gloucestershire Royal before the job was put out. Because I imagine, you know, if you're a psychologist and you want a sort of vocational aspect to it as well, what a wonderful way to help families through this.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, wow, it's brilliant. So, well, I mean, it's such a fantastic story. So when businesses are looking at, because we're pulling this back to businesses a little bit more, when businesses are looking for, you know, charity or charities to support, well, what would you say are some of the key things that they might want to consider in making a decision for, you know, deciding on a charity of the year, for example?
I really got on my high horse about this, and I likened it to, imagine opening a restaurant in Gloucestershire. People go out of their way to buy local meat, local cakes, local this, that, and the next thing. And yet people support charities that are national and have great big offices on Regent Street and pay 150, 200,000 to their CEOs. So I say to people, choose a local charity. If you started a local business, you'd use local people. Choose a local charity, expect to be shown where your money is going, you know, and expect them to stick it all over social media, because that's good for you. If people see that you're connected to charities, then that's really good for you as well. And I just say to them, you know, I've been volunteering, raising money for years. There's no high salaries here. This is all the money goes to where it should go, really.
And is there anything in terms of how the charities are set up, or how they're registered, or anything that people should be aware of? Because I'm conscious that this is always the sort of area where there's bound to be some scammers in there trying to, you know, relieve people of pennies who are not registered charities, or not, you know, being properly governed, or whatever.
The Charities Commission is tricky. They are pretty strict, I have to say. I just think you look at their accounts. I actually sit on something called the Honourable Company of Gloucestershire, and I'm on the trust board. So everyone that applies for a grant, they send in their accounts. Yeah. And sometimes we came across a local charity recently that their fundraising costs were something like 80 odd thousand to bring in 120,000. And that just seemed crazy to be spending all that money on fundraising to just 40 odd thousand, really, you know. And you just think that is not being run, that charity is not being run properly. And so everyone has access to every single charity's accounts. You go online and read them all, and it makes very interesting reading, really. Sure. But you know, I would say just ask to see where your money's going.
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. Excellent, thanks, Julie. Has anybody got any questions for Julie, or would like to hear more about some of the examples and things?
She's done people into silence.
Bob?
Indeed, yes. I network quite a lot with a guy called David Taylor, whose daughter died when she was a young mother. She's been dead 42 years, I think, now. And he's raising money because apparently brain tumours are the biggest killer of teenagers or people under 40. It's the biggest killer, silent killer. Nobody knows about it. So he's been on a mission. He's 82 now. He did a zip wire in Kent a little while ago. They're trying to do events all over the country. He's trying to get help. He was going wind walking, but his doctor said at 82 you're not allowed to do it, so he had to get somebody else. So he's as passionate about his charity. It's called In Sue's Name. That was his daughter's name.
Oh yes, I've seen.
Yeah, so he's networking an awful lot, again, to do exactly the same thing, because awareness of brain tumours. The only time you'll know, he said that when his daughter was admitted, I think there was 4 families in the ward, and I think 3 of them died. That the children died. And you know, the fact his daughter had 2 children, devastated. So yeah, I'm very aware of brain tumour problems, and yes, I think well, it's like every deservable charity. The money, all the money, should go to the charity, and not, as you rightly say, some CEO earn 120k, because it's not right.
No,
if you want to be a charity, you give your time and services.
Yeah. And it's, the percentage is tiny. The amount that goes into cancer research, the amount that goes to brain tumours is tiny compared with, and you know, you look at breast cancer, we're so good with breast cancer now, and actually children's leukemia we're really good with, because I think years ago Ian Botham did a lot of exposure on it, and it's the same actually with MND now. You know, apparently they're giving the same drugs now they did 50 years ago to multiple neurone disease. And that's now why all these rugby players that are getting it, that is going to lift the profile massively. But brain tumours just don't get that same sort of attention.
Yeah. Cheryl, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just an observation really, and I just wanted to praise Julie in relation to the strategy, because I think it's really good that people like me, small businesses, are able to kind of participate in things like this through the events that you put on. You know, I'm one of those people that are not probably going to be able to raise the £2,000 for you, but I can give along, you know, the way. And she's put on some fantastic events, you know, afternoon tea this weekend. I'm going to an ABBA event tonight, so I'm going to dance tonight away. Yeah, so you know, that is a way, I guess, of bringing the community together and not isolating people. That's the thing, isn't it? You can easily, you know, think it's, I always often get really angry at people that put on quiz nights and say teams of 6, you know, for £100 or something, and you think, well, I'd quite like to go to that, but nobody's inviting me along to join in. Yeah, it's good. I'm really enjoying engaging, shall we say, with the activities that you're putting on.
Well, I suddenly discovered that September was Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, so I thought, right, I'll jump on the back of that. And our local coffee shop is going gold, and I've been trying to get businesses to go gold, decorate their windows for awareness more than fundraising. But ABBA, that's hence the ABBA Gold and the golden tea. But it's killed me this month. I cannot wait to go back to just asking businesses for £2,000. It's going to be easier. But it's been great for awareness, really.
Sometimes it is about awareness as much as
it is.
That's brilliant, Julie. Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully.
Thank you for having me on.
Watches this.
And my sister made my backdrop. She's very proud of it.
Good.
Look, Bob's going to take a photo of it.
Well done. Fantastic.
Thank you. Did you eat my breakfast now while I'm watching you?
So, good morning again. And it's our second interview of the morning with Business Breakthrough. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Cheryl Whiting, who's got a book out, and I'm pretty confident it is already out because I've actually seen you somewhere else holding it up and saying, hey, here's a copy. It's called Professionalism Matters, as you can actually see on screen. So, Cheryl, I think probably the simplest way to start that is, do you want to just reintroduce yourself again for 2 seconds so that we all know exactly who you are, and then maybe just tell us a little bit about what actually prompted you to write Professionalism Matters.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I've been writing this book, Professionalism Matters, for the last 2 years. I'll tell you in a moment why it's taken me 2 years to write. But I'll just tell you a little bit of what the book is about. The book is about, it's aimed at people in business, whether that's business startups or whether that's people like yourselves that perhaps seasoned in business and have been entrepreneurs for quite a long time. But the book talks about issues that matter to clients and therefore need to matter to us. And so I explore a number of topics, but really it's about perhaps understanding why we need to be professional, particularly in a competitive market, and thinking about how we go about achieving clients' satisfaction, maintaining standards and building a positive reputation, and why that's so important. So I've got a bit of, it's kind of like an all-inclusive guide really to being a professional, particularly if you're working in client-facing roles. So I guess Pete asked me what prompted me to write this book. Well, lots of reasons. On a personal level, it was because I kind of felt that I needed to do it. I wanted to show myself that I was capable of doing this. Preventing a bit of brain rot, particularly after lockdown. I didn't cope too well with lockdown. I'm a sort of person that likes to fire on all 4 cylinders, you know, I'm at my best. So I thought I needed to set myself a bit of a challenge and expand my talents, I guess, really. But professionalism is a subject that I have been researching as an academic. I'm a former I still am a university lecturer. I was an associate professor in medical imaging and clinical research. And I used to research concepts of professionalism, and I've been doing that as an academic since about 2003. So I felt as though I'd built up a lot of knowledge about that subject. But I'd also moved from various environments. I'd moved from a background in healthcare and in education, and now I was self-employed, and I was thinking, oh, you know, what's, you know, professionalism was looking very different. It was kind of changing. You know, and I'd been in an environment where everybody had trusted me. I was that go-to person. I had a really strong reputation for my knowledge and expertise. And then all of a sudden I was in this world where I was having to convince people, you know, that I was, you know, a capable and competent, you know, professional trainer. But also it's from what I observed, you know, I was going around networking events and I was speaking to people. They were telling me about some of their practices. I was beginning to question whether or not they were ethical or not. And I felt that there's a lot of ambiguity around how people, you know, behave. And so therefore I thought, you know what, I've got all this information. It needs to be shared. So that's what kind of convinced me that I really ought to kind of get it down and start to write it. But as I began to write it, I realized I need lots of examples from people from the real world of business. I was only a novice when it came to being self-employed. And so I set about interviewing 60 people in business to get their thoughts and perspectives on how do they stand out as a professional when everybody else claims to be a professional, and how do you stand out as someone that has integrity?
Brilliant. Okay, so I don't think anybody, if you take the title in standalone glorious isolation, Professionalism Matters, I don't think anyone on this call or in the wider world would probably argue that statement. And as such, it's a great title for the book. But as you said there, you know, we live in a world of professionals, and if you're in a world of professionals, you are hopefully by definition a professional. So therefore, why is this different? What is it in this book that makes it different from something else you might pick up in the same subject?
Yeah, when I started to think about the book, I started to do a lot of research. I mean, I've read loads and loads of books on professionalism. Let me tell you, by virtue of, you know, my academic writing and work that I did. But I did what I would call a bibliographic analysis. I looked at, you know, the type of book, who it was actually aimed at, what people were focusing on. And they kind of fell into the categories of being quite academic, which are often quite indigestible, I guess. Lots of books out there that have done rigorous critiques around the politics, professionalisation, you know, sociology. Other books were focused on things like etiquette and manners and skill development that were largely aimed at school leavers, you know, and graduates, people that were kind of entering the world of work for the first time. So there's lots of pocket reference books as well out there about do's and don'ts, really, you know, how to write an email, those type of books, really. And then there's lots of books that were aimed at CEOs that often equated it to leadership. Being a professional is, you know, linked to kinds of leadership, and they saw kind of the books as an effective tool to management and commercial success. Now, all of these had been written by specific authors, really. And I mean, every book, you know, on professionalism, there are common themes. You can't escape, you know, that. So I don't feel I'm telling people anything that perhaps that they don't already know or has been covered elsewhere, really. But I wanted, when I was reading all of these other books, I didn't see myself in it. And what I wanted to do was to write a book that people could really identify, and for it to kind of be inclusive, really. So I felt there were opportunities to kind of, I guess, fill that gap by expanding on the wisdom and insight of other people, because a lot of the books had just been written from the perspective of someone, you know, their own perspective. And I felt actually we can look at what the good practice looks like from a range of perspectives and from a range of business people. Brilliant. In different sectors.
Yeah, okay, so we can see that and we can understand what that particular angle is. So coming to a sort of practical element, and I pick the book up and I have a look at it and I open it, what am I expecting to find? What is it that I'm seeing in there?
What is it that you are going to find? Well, that's quite interesting. I've just lost my sheet of paper here. There we go. All right, okay, because I've lifted it. I didn't want to open the book, you see. Right, okay. So I've got 12 chapters within the book. And they're kind of broken down into subsections. So I've kind of made it easy for people to kind of dip in and dip out of, really, as people please. It's a very positive book. We talk about professionalism in a positive way. So I don't talk about unprofessionalism only at the start, but it's not about calling out unprofessionalism. It's about saying, look, we are all work in progress. You know, we can never achieve professionalism. You know, it's not an ultimate point. The world around us changes. We've got to change with it. What strategies are we using to make sure that we maintain our standards and develop appropriately, really? I take the view that we're all capable of achieving our professional best, but there's scope for improvement in some way, shape or form, really. And it's got to be something that we kind of keep working at. I explore things from the client perspective. So take, for example, unreliability. If we're unreliable, what does that look like and what does that mean for our clients, and what is the impact of that unreliability? And then thinking about actually what is it we have to do, how we get our kind of house in order, our systems, our procedures, you know, how do we develop such that, you know, we are consistent and, you know, reliable and consistent with each and every client. So I talk about things like professional identity, the way that we look perhaps, and the way that we feel and think, you know, prompts us to act as a professional. I talk about attitudes and values, the implications of those, and the commitment it actually requires to sustain, you know, some of the values, so that we can kind of live and breathe those. I talk about the central tenets of professionalism in terms of honesty, trust, transparency, reliability and consistency, how we can deliver that great service, I guess, time and time again. Talk about respect and dignity, but also about self-respect as well. There's a big section on that. And why we should be competent decision makers, how we should empower ourselves to make appropriate decisions, but how by being good critical decision makers ourselves, we can actually empower our clients to be the same. I talk about professional excellence in terms of sustaining quality, avoiding complacency. And then my last chapter is all about passion and purpose. And that's actually I think is what my best chapter. It's a chapter that I like the most. And that features Julie within that chapter, because what I talk about there is extending our professionalism into the realms of civic professionalism. The idea is that we've got all this talent, we've got all these skills. Actually, let's leverage it, put our talents, you know, to the good of society, and the impact that has on our professional development as well, really. The idea that we can be fit for practice, it can enhance our well-being, but you know, actually if we are passionate about what we do and we're helping other people, we're actually developing as better professionals by default. But it's not necessarily about what people are learning about the subject per se. It's about what people are learning about themselves as they're reading their book, because it's about getting people to think about how they integrate some of these principles and actually kind of sustain that momentum. You know, it's getting people to explore how effective they are in engaging with others and the world around them, so that they grow to be professionals that other people will want to emulate. Really, it's there then as for young entrepreneurs as a kind of framework to learn, you know, from the experience of others. But for people like yourselves that are quite experienced within business, it's there to validate your own practices so that you can check to make sure that you're doing the right things right.
Yes, and you know, we're all familiar when we read a book. It does. You're right. It does make you, whether it's a story and you're actually examining your own thought process and journey, and you're making the story up in your own head as you go, whether it's a book of learning, and it makes you consider and think. And so actually this professionalism, it is true. It is, all of us need to look at that and evaluate our own position. You've written a number of books over the years, I think I'm correct in saying. I think
a number of papers, academic papers, within journals, certainly, yeah. So I've been published before, yeah.
So approaching it as a book of this length, with all the involvement you've looked at with the people around and the interviews and this kind of thing, how easy was it? How you know, I'm not an author and I'm sort of not an academic. I kind of make it up as I go along. He never really admits to, but I do. So you know, from your perspective, coming at this as somebody who's used to that academic sphere and a bit of author writing, you know, but engaging with so many people, how easy was it to do?
Yeah, well, I only intended to write a book of 80,000 words, and it's now 130,000 words. So it got to be a bigger project than I ever thought it would be. So I'm not the sort of person that starts something knowing that it's not going to end, you know. So when I decided I was write a book, that book would have been finished, you know. It was, you know, I wouldn't embark upon it unless I thought I could actually achieve it. But I invested in a book coach. So once a month I met with a lady who was a very experienced writer, publisher herself. That was, you know, amazing. You know, a lot of people are paid to go on courses, and I kind of saw it as, you know, my own opportunity for learning and development and to enhance my skills. Because I want, when you write a book on professionalism, it's got to be professional. It's got to be the best you can possibly kind of be. So she kept me on track, of course, explored ideas with her, and I think about aspects of writing, and I think that enabled me to improve the quality of that writing. I also joined a writing group. One of the things I talk about in chapter 1 about professional identity is about putting yourself amongst people that you aspire, you know, to be like and want to be like, and so I joined a writing group. So, you know, got lots of tips and tricks and things like that from them. But that also prepared me for the world of publishing, because you've got to remember, if you write a book, you've got to publish it. So, and that's a whole new kind of ball game, really. But I had a lot of support from the people that I interviewed, which was absolutely, and some of them I interviewed, you know, 2 years ago at the very start of this project, and they've still held on and they still believed in me, which was absolutely fantastic. They always knew, I guess, that I would get there. One of the things about interviewing people is you've got to spend time interviewing people. You've then got to think about what they've said, how you can relate that to those concepts of professionalism. But also there's a lot of cross-checking with people, because I've interviewed them and I've included their quotes. This is sending back information to them to say, is this okay? Are you happy with what's written? So there's a whole range of kinds of administrative aspects going on as well, I guess, really. And then I've had people that have supported me by reading the whole book. So people have not just read chapters, it's been out in kind of prior circulation to get people's feedback, you know, because that's been really important in terms of refining it, really. So it's been quite a task, really. And you know, a lot of people have, I guess, you know, have approached me, you know, genuine desire really to help and support me, which has been absolutely fantastic. And I don't know if you know Dan Harris from the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, he has written the most amazing foreword. I keep telling people, if you don't want to read the book, just read the foreword, because it is absolutely amazing. And, you know, to be fair to him, he's done a really good job, a very accurate overview of the book and its intent, and set it, you know, within a much more wider global kind of context, really. So yeah, there's been a lot of admin, there's been a lot of support, there's been, you know,
on that whole area of support. I mean, obviously you mentioned down there, have there been a lot of people in your background supporting what you've been doing and helping you actually move the thing forward?
Yes. Yeah. You mean for my academic career or just? Yeah.
Well, from wherever. I mean, obviously when you're writing this book, you will need the support to do it.
That's right, and getting people as well to promote, you know, it and ongoing, and I think people have enjoyed the experience. One of the things that my publishers have said is, you know, actually, you know, there's a lot of energy around the book because I've actually brought people along with me. You know, in that, and some people have found it quite cathartic. Some of the interviews, people have said, wow, I've gone away being really inspired, you know. It's made me think, because the questions that I posed were quite reflective ones. Didn't want to say that I interrogate people, but I wanted, you know, to get, you know, to the heart of things, and that meant asking some kind of serious and deep questions.
Quite right too. So, okay, so you're an author. It's true. You've done it. You've got a book out. What does the future look for the author that is named as Dr. Cheryl Whiting?
Yeah, I think the future's quite bright. I'm enjoying getting out and about networking, although yesterday I came across a lot of people that I'd already seen at a networking event in the morning, so they're listening to it all again. So I think the answer is buy my book and then I'll shut up. But anyway, but I'm getting a lot of positive response, really, from it. I'm relaunching my kinds of business training, but I'm much more focused now around aspects of the book. So I've got some lecture tours planned within universities because, of course, you know, my market is people that are just graduating, entering the world of working at kind of professional spheres. Universities and colleges. I'm going on the radio. I've got a Radio Gloucester gig. I've got Julie on. I'm going to go on Julie's. I think picking my 7 tracks, Julie, will be harder than talking about my book. I've got a launch event coming up as well, really. And what I'm wanting to do is in organisations, and perhaps this is where you can help connect me with people, is I want to run a book club. So thinking about organisations that have got at least, you know, 5 or more employees, whereby we come together perhaps once a month, talk about a chapter and think about what that chapter means in the context of the, you know, the business, the sector. So how do we kind of translate some of what we're reading and put that into practice? So I'm wanting to launch that as well.
I'll chat with you about that afterwards. I've got some thoughts about that, but we'll have that chat anyway offline at some point. Okay, so advice. Come on, everyone else sitting there. Oh gosh, sorry, I've just accidentally. There we go. Sorry, I pressed a button on my computer and you all disappeared for a moment. Fortunately, I didn't. What would you say to anyone else thinking, gosh, that's an idea, I'd like to write a book?
I think there's a book within it. As I keep telling Julie, she needed to document this journey that she was on this last year, because I think there is a fantastic book within that. So that's Julie's next project. I'm going to hold her to that. Research is the key thing. You might have a great idea, but I think before you put pen to paper, look what other books are out there. I guess, you know, what other people are saying, where there's a gap in the market, where you can position yourself to be quite different. I read a couple of books about how to write a book, but there's a limit there. I think there's a time when you've got to stop reading and start writing. Don't go for the books that say, write your book in 30 days, because trust me, any book that's written within 30 days isn't worth reading. And I think discipline yourself. You know, I sat down at my computer every day for 2 hours. I made it the first task that I did so that it meant that I got the rest of the day. Some days I sat down and I wrote loads. Some days I hadn't got a single thought in my head. But the point was, it was about maintaining that kind of momentum, building it as part of your routine. And in actual fact, the more you write, the better you become. And I think I've gone back to some of my earlier chapters that I wrote, and I was able to kind of go back to them, redraft them, rewrite them again with a much kind of clearer insight. I got myself a book coach. I thought it was worth the investment. I paid £100 a month. And for that, I got an hour and a half session with a call within the middle of the month, just as kind of a check-in. And I got, that helps with the physical and psychological challenges. It helped improve my writing. And one of the things it meant was I didn't have to go for structural editing. There's lots of editing phases, and the first phase is structural editing. I'd actually got the structure right through my work coach. I moved, it enabled me to bypass that stage of editing. I went on to the next stage of editing, which was content editing. So, and there wasn't a lot of content to take out, move or change around. Then I went into the kind of English language type editing, really, the copy editing and the proofreading. These are all stages, of course, that you add within that process. But certainly the other thing is, forget about all these fancy applications that you can buy that make you feel like a writer. You just need a pen and a piece of paper, or you just need to sit down at a computer and open a Word document,
Fantastic.
and just
yeah,
get it out, whatever, and just dump it on paper. I always say to my students, you can't edit a blank page and it stinks. So as soon as you get words on paper, you can do something with it, however good, bad or ugly it looks.
Has anyone got a question at all, or thoughts for the process for Cheryl? That was really, Bob and Julie, they're queuing up now. They're queuing up. Bob, you got your hand up fractionally first. You beat Julie to it by a moment. Go for it, Bob.
It's just to say that my brother, Peter Scott, you can find him on LinkedIn. He works for NASA, and he's written a couple of books on artificial intelligence. And he's telling me the processes that he had to go through. The first one was interesting. I think the second one's got 330 pages, God knows how many words. But what has come out of it is that he's now doing podcasts with the people that he interviewed during the book. So he's now taken it to the next stage. I think he's done 150 podcasts. And of course, the more he does, the more people want to get on it. So it's really sort of grown tremendously. I mean, he's just flown back from Dubai because he was asked to speak about it. He was over in London. So it really, really understand what he's gone through. I'm not an author. I'm a practical guy. I'm an engineer. But he's an academic. He was very well taught at Cambridge, and from there he went to NASA. So just proves that if you learn at school, you're okay, aren't you? So, but his books are quite something. And just as a matter of, if you're interested, 3rd of October, 5:30, the FSB have got a talk. He's actually doing an hour's talk on annual business. So if you and the events are free, you can go and log on, go to the FSB website, 3rd of October, Making Sense of AI in Your Business, I think it's called. And over to Julie.
Brilliant. Julie, you had a question there.
Yeah, you said that you've written way more words. How much longer has it taken than you originally thought it would take?
I thought I would probably be working on it for about 1.5 years, Julie. Knowing, as a researcher, of course, I've worked on projects that have gone on for for 2 or 3 years. I guess I got a publisher, and that was like you jumping around and you think, that's fantastic. But then I was working at their pace rather than working at my own pace. So, the last 6 months for me has been quite kind of slow, I guess, really, because I felt I've wanted it out there, really. I forgot to say as well, really, if you are thinking of writing a book, it costs money, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that. You don't write a book not to be able to publish it, and there are costs again involved in that. Although I have got a publisher, I didn't get my publisher until quite late. So I had my book coach, I'd had some professional editing to pay for and things like that. So there's still and that's why you've got to sell it. going to take me a long while before I make any money out of the book. It has been, you know, a labour of love, but I'm hoping that my spin-offs, shall we say, and again, it's probably like your brother Bob, you know, it's the spin-offs that are going to generate the income from the book. But Bob, I used to teach engineering in schools. My background is in medical imaging, so a lot of physics and a lot of mechanics. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Cheryl, thanks so much. Thanks so much. That was really interesting, both in terms of what the book is and actually the insights into what went into it.
Okay, you know, thank you for having me. Yeah.